Big good one here, and eventually we will like, subscribe, share, help promote and rank up my channel, all that good stuff. Normally I drop a video at 9, 11, and 2 o'clock every day, 7 days a week. We're reviewing Stargirl right now, episode 12, season 1, Stars and Stripes. And I'm not going to do like a director's commentary or some narration that narrates the whole thing. I'm just going to give you the best and worst stuff. I'll break the Act 1, I'll give you the best stuff up front to hook you. And in the Act 2, I'll give you my personal bias, anything that may not affect your perception of the story, but it affected mine because it doesn't necessarily hurt the story. It's just my personal bias. Act 3, I'll give you the worst stuff. Save the worst for last. Because stuff's only as good as its ending. So with that said, Stargirl's based off a DC Comics character. And the logline for this one is, with the ISA on their trail, Courtney, Pat, and the team regroup to figure out their next steps. Meanwhile, Rick makes a breakthrough, and the team prepares for a shutdown with the ISA. Now, I will give some spoilers, so fair warning. But I'm not going to break down everything where the entire episode. So, Act 1, the best stuff I could say about this episode. There are a lot of little moments, like they're up front in the episode. There's a big confrontation, and the confrontation itself between Pat and Sportsmaster. The initial confrontation isn't that great, but what follows is absolutely great. Hardcore, just toe to toe, fist, just punching the shit out of each other, man. It was pretty great, and we got a lot of those moments that we really needed. Things being explained to Mike as they should be at this point in the story. They're kind of overdue. That Mike needs to know these things. But basically, this results in the ISA coming at the New Justice Society of America, and it's pretty hardcore in the opening. It gets pretty brutal. And Mike has a shining moment, and he learns about his father, what his father's been up to, and it just gives him real reason to look up his father. That stuff is great. Meanwhile, we have characters like Icicle, who still are giving us conflicting vibes. He seems like he's really conflicted on the choices they're making and the stuff they're wanting to go through with, but he hasn't. He's still going in that direction, even though it seems like he's bothered. Brainwave, of course, is much stronger. Is much stronger than he was, because apparently he's absorbed his son's power. They flipped the script on the pages of the comics and did it differently in the show. So now Brainwave is immensely more powerful. And we find out everything that they are actually up to. And here's the big reveal. The big reveal is that the Injustice Society are actually democratic socialists. They're social justice warrior types, talking about racial inequity. They basically want to brainwash millions across several states, only the adults. And for Project New America, their constitution, their version, and it involves free healthcare, eliminating racial inequity, or global warming. And so they are democratic socialists. They are the people that try to virtue signal all the time in real life. They are part of the woke crowd, and it's actually so. This is an odd thing when it comes to CW, because CW supports all that woke talk, all that democratic socialist stuff, especially with their Supergirl show. So I just found that hilarious and a surprising reveal. But throughout this episode, there are great little moments that we actually needed. Small little character moments and stuff that work really well. The Sportsmaster Pat, going toe to toe. It's really humorous, and it's like not like overtly humorous where it affects the awesome action. But this episode's got a a fair amount of awesome action and VFX. The exceptionally well done. The choreography on here is still exceptionally well done. It's just wow, man. They still get it right. However, there are some things on this episode that aren't perfect that I felt affected the pacing, and I'll get into that in a minute. But it was great for Mike to get his moment. And another great scene was when I believe you pronounce her name Anya Bowen uh, confronted Sportsmaster and his wife and just told them how they're unfit to be parents and how they're depraved lunatics. And of course, there were consequences for what she said to them. And I was kind of when they were at their house, I was kind of wondering where Artemis Croc was, especially when she brought up their daughter and the fact they're unfit to be parents, which is actually 100% right. They are depraved lunatics that love violence and they are unfit to be parents. Everything she was saying to them in that confrontation, even though she's a villain and they're on the same team, but they messed up and she came in to clean their mess up, and they did something that is likely going to really piss Icicle off, and it's going to lead to the villains butting heads. As we've already seen, there are moments littered throughout here, and maybe Brainwave and Dragon King may even end up butting heads, but I don't think so. But I do think it was odd that they included that conversation between Brainwave and Shiv when it comes down to it about her being looked at as a failure to her father in an experiment. I do think I didn't really see reason for us to readdress that. And let's just move into personal bias. There was, well, I can't really say I have a personal bias about anything because the things I do want to talk about, I do feel actually affect the story. So let's just get into Act 3. The worst stuff, there are some jokes that fall flat. They're made at inappropriate times because the stakes are higher than ever with them coming to assassinate them and all that, and them having to go into hiding. The stakes are higher than ever. So some jokes that are written in there, of course, feel like they fall flat because they're just not appropriate with all the tension and stuff. I realize they're meant to break the tension, but they didn't feel like they were doing that for me. And there are some things that really slow down the pacing in here. And as I said, that conversation between Shiv and Brainwave, it felt unnecessary because we have already gotten all that stuff between Dragon King and her daughter, and that the perception of how he perceives her, or at least that's what it seems. Also, the song when they were all going their way to do their part of the mission, the song didn't seem like it fit with what was going on and all that. But other than that, back to the best of. I gotta say, I do like how well executed it was. That it wasn't for the sake of convenience. It didn't feel to me like for the sake of convenience. Now, maybe for other people it might feel that way, but when Rick is trying to decode his father's journal, of course, Shining Knight's got nothing for him. He's just going to go clean the bathroom. I didn't find that as one of the jokes that fall flat, or I didn't think it was hilarious, but I thought it was within character considering how his mind is affected. But when it comes to Rick discovering, just Pat dropping the line about, well, what about your father's card? Because, he loved that card and stuff. So how Rick been overlooking this? I don't find that this was a convenient reveal or whatever that Cat just conveniently Pat just conveniently overlooked the car or whatever, or that it was just convenient timing. I find this really subtle approach because Rick is a hot-headed individual, and he's been looking at this as birth dates and stuff like that. He's a hot-headed individual with a short temper that can't not focus long enough to really figure these things out. So Pat dropping that line and then I'm figuring out that way was really great. I do have to question though why Beth's goggles couldn't decode the journal or whatever, but because Dr. Midnight really knows almost everything there is to know. But it was a cool thing to have it set up where it shows the blueprints and all that, and they figure everything out. And there's a lot of things in here that are from the comic books, little Easter eggs and stuff that are kind of in reverse of what the comics did, are in the same line with what the comic books are. Little scenes that are kind of just done differently. So there were a lot of really cool, well done things in here, and the way things go down in this episode with the adults being affected by this thing, but not the younger generation, it does make sense. It does make sense in the way it plays out. I'm curious to where it's going to lead because the way it left off. But I'm more curious about what's going to go down with the villains, considering everything. Brainwave looking conflicted, and then you have Sportsmaster and his wife just going off doing things their way, and the possibility of one of them dead because of that. But one thing I do want to say though is Anya Bowen, when it comes down to her talking to her son, though, I felt like that scene was poorly written or poorly delivered because we really don't know the context of her family and home life and all that stuff. And to have that scene play out like it did on the show, it just felt like really hard to buy into that she would just kind of tell her son to do this type of stuff, or tell her son that her father did this type of stuff. It just felt like a really weird scene to me. Um, but everything else was great. I wouldn't say this was one of the best episodes. I would actually say this isn't as good as the previous episodes. I would give this episode like 6 out of 10 because there are some really great and hilarious things in here. So well done action as always. It looks rough, like the stunt work and all that too. It looks pretty well done. The best thing to me was the big reveal that the villains are kind of like they're social justice warriors and democratic socialists, and they're like, oh, wait, are we on the right side because their new constitution has all this stuff about global warming and eliminating racial inequity and all that? But obviously they want to brainwash people, and it's going to cost millions of lives, and it's also going to cost them free will, which is pretty much in line with all the democratic socialist stuff that gets talked about. Because well, we're not going to get political, but I just find that hilarious because CW does in itself, and most of Hollywood does get political, and CW is woke, and Stargirl will end up on the CW. They had this deal with DC Universe and all that, but Stargirl's going to be exclusively over there, and Supergirl's like always doing political stuff, trying to set the frame where CW is all about being woke, and this kind of representation that the villains are actually like these woke people in this situation, and this it's just hilarious, man. Anyways, I'd give this episode a 6 out of 10. It was really well done and all that. I just think the pacing and some of the jokes weren't appropriate for the moment. Well, actually, you know what? I'll give it a 7 out of 10 because it does have really well done action scenes, and just the villains, they surprise you, man. They really do. 7 out of 10. Fake good win here. Eventually we will. Like, subscribe, share, all that good stuff. Stay awesome. Rock on and tune in for the next time, next Monday when I review the next episode if you liked everything you heard here.